welcome everyone to the GSM's Pride Spotlight. This week I have Blake Howdeshell, my inventory manager slash head porter now, because we recently promoted our head porter. So welcome. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah.
I know it was, I'm going to be honest with you, it was kind of a little bit of a push to get Blake to come in. We've been trying to get Blake to come in for probably about 2 weeks now. But he's a very busy guy, so I will touch on that. So Blake, was you born and bred in St. Louis?
Yeah, so I was born in Crestwood.
Okay.
I don't know if you know where that is, but it's like the old Watson Road, and right where the old mall was, that was demolished. Now it's just a flat field, but I grew up there. So I guess, let's see, I moved out of my parents' house when I was 19, so about 19 years.
Okay. What high school did you go to?
High school, I went to St. John Vianney in Kirkwood.
Oh, you went to Vianney?
Yep.
Wow,
yeah,
that's a pretty high-level school, isn't it?
Yeah, it was one of the, what is it called, the Marianist high schools. It's like a, kind of like a sect in Catholic or Christian.
Yeah.
And there's Vianney, Chaminade, and St. Mary's. And the funny thing is, a couple of the kids that I went to grade school with, we were like friends, and each of us went to one of the schools.
Really?
One of my buddies went to Chaminade, the other one went to St. Mary's.
Well, isn't Vianney a private school?
Yeah,
Private high
it
school?
is. Yeah, it's kind of tucked away right behind where Target is in Kirkwood there.
Well, I learned something new about you today, Mr. Private School. High school guy.
I know.
After high school, did you go to college at all?
I did. Right after college, I went to Webster University for, I think it was about a year and a half.
And what did you study there?
I studied computer science. There were a lot of like specific degrees in computer science, but I was kind of more like the broad,
kind of the general gist.
Yeah, the general computer science. I think they just literally called it computer science. But I took that there while I was at Webster University.
Did you work while you were at Webster? Or?
I did. I actually was still working at my first job at the time, which was Cold Stone Creamery. So the funny thing about that interview, so when I first got hired for that, I was...
How did you stay so slim if you worked at Cold Stone?
I don't know, man. I tell you, I kind of got tired of the ice cream.
Did you eat a lot of it while you were there?
Yeah. I think it was like within the first year of working there, I learned how to make the ice cream.
Yeah.
So I'd have to taste test, you know.
Yeah,
gotta make sure it tastes
every 2 seconds, the same
gotta
flavor.
make sure it tastes all right, you know.
Oh, it's a little off. Let me just try it again.
Let me make a whole new batch. I got to take this one home. But no, yeah, and I worked there actually for a long time. But I was working there when I was at Webster, and the funny thing about that was when I first started at 16, the like hiring process. There were a bunch of kids, and we went to, there's like this basement room in the Magic House.
Yeah.
And we had to do kind of like an audition where they'd have like a list of songs, because, you know, at Cold Stone, if you get tipped, you have to sing a song.
I didn't know that. You do?
Yeah.
Do they still do that?
Yeah.
I never knew that.
I know.
To be honest with you, I don't know if I've ever been to a legit Cold Stone Creamery.
It's actually not bad. It's kind of cool because they call it the Gia, but it's like a flat marble stone.
Yeah.
And they like, you know, mix up the ice cream with your like whatever toppings you have. And it's actually really cool. And a lot of the
I've had Cold Stone Creamery ice cream, but I'm just not sure if I've actually been to the store, so that might be why.
Gotcha. Yeah, because I know a lot of places will sell.
They just sell it
in the
the
store, but it's actually fun kind of going there because watching them mix it
Didn't
together.
there used to be one over here, didn't they? But I think it closed.
That I don't know, because I haven't really lived out here before, but there was, the one that I worked at was in Kirkwood, kind of down the street from Target. It's like a Jimmy John's now, I think. That happened like years ago. But I worked there, and then they own, I think there's still one, you know, where Ronnie's Plaza is?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's right across, or no, it's in the same plaza, like across from, there's like a TGI Fridays, I think.
On the
like
corner,
right.
Yeah.
So
yeah, my wife's parents used to live in Sunset Hills, so what we used to do is we used to go visit them, go to TGI Fridays, and go to the movies.
Yeah, there you go. And then after,
On a
that's
regular
usually what I
basis.
would do, and then afterwards I'd get a little bit of Cold Stone Creamery or something like that.
So after you finished college, you carried on at Coldstone. What did you have to Coldstone?
So after Coldstone, I had worked there for 5 or 6 years or something, and then I think it was 2013 I started working at Target, and that was another place that I kind of worked at for a while. I worked there 2 separate times, and the first time I worked there was for like 2.5, 3 years. And I started there on like the sales floor, and I wanted to work my way up, but they had an opening in security. So I worked in security for about 1.5 years, and I actually, I think it was the first time I worked there, I worked, or maybe it was the second time I worked there. So, but anyways, the first time I worked there was for 1.5 years, and that was a lot of fun in security actually.
What did you do in between the 2 Target times?
In between, I actually worked at I'd call it a smaller factory, but I worked at this place called Caps Inc. It's actually kind of by the headquarters. It's
Yeah,
like
in
down the
Surf
street.
City.
Yeah. So, but I worked there for 7 or 8 months, and so my relationship at the time, it was night shifts, so she was day, and she didn't really like the differing schedules. So eventually I did quit. It was actually not a terrible job. They had really good benefits, but kind of working the night shift can get rough on you.
So after Target, then where? Here?
So Target, Caps, and then I went back to Target and worked security again, and that was when I worked at Kirkwood. I worked at the Hampton location and the Brentwood location, and then after Target, I think I worked there 2 years, and then I tried to like work for myself for a little while. I tried to do something with like YouTube and all that stuff. It didn't pan out, and then I tried to join the Army for a little while.
When you say tried to, what happened?
So I wanted to join the National Guard, and when I tried to join, I actually went off and shipped to it's this thing called reception where they receive the new recruits. And I went to Fort Leonard Wood because I was trying to join as the military police. And when I went there, there were some things that I guess, so my recruiter had told me not to really talk about from like my past. I had seen a psychiatrist for a short period of time. And so I ended up, I'm a very honest person, so I ended up telling them, and they were like, all right, cool, whatever. And then they were just like, but we can't really take you. So I was like, all right. So then I ended up, after 2 months of being there, I had finally gotten home because it takes a while to out process. And there were a lot of kids who were actually there for a lot longer than I was. But I'd gotten out of there. And then after that, I took a brief period of time, probably like 5 months, where I wasn't working. And then that's when I ended up coming here. Yeah.
So we'll get on to here in a minute. What about outside work, recreational-wise? What hobbies do you have? You ever play sports?
So I grew up playing ice hockey.
I've noticed how.
Yeah, I know. You see me slide across the ice every now and again. But I grew up playing ice hockey since I was like 3 or 4. My dad was big into it. Other than that, I'm big into gaming. I do exercise.
What's your favorite game right now?
I play Rocket League. I try to get into a bunch of different
someone
MMOs.
you might be able to compete against.
Yeah.
What's your rank? Like?
Well, I was like almost grand champ. That's like the highest rank. But the funny thing is, I actually found out recently Ford was putting one of their trucks in the game too.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they were putting I think they call it the F-150, but I think it's the Raptor, actually. They were putting it in the game. So I don't know if that was anything they were trying to do with Ford. But it actually looks kind of cool, and I wanted to get it, but I never did. But
yeah, I play it a little bit. My son plays
you?
it a lot. I know Zach plays it also.
It's fun. It's very entertaining. And then I play like a lot of other games. I always kind of grew up on gaming too. Back when I was about 3 or 4, my dad actually bought a Sega, and my grandmother had an old Atari, you know, the Pong with the joystick and everything. And so anytime I'd go over there, I'd play that. And so I kind of grew up around, because my dad was a big tech guy because he worked for Washington University What? He was in the clinical studies and something department, but he worked IT for them for years. So I kind of grew up around computers and game consoles, you name it. I pretty much either worked with it or played on it.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, other than that, not a ton of hobbies, but I'm definitely starting to try to branch out and find new things.
Well, let's touch on one. You're thinking about scuba diving, right?
Yep. I'm definitely trying to get my scuba. I don't know when I will, but hopefully within the next year, I'll at least start taking classes for it.
Yeah.
Because I know there are some different places.
So I'm PADI certified, and Blake and I were
He's shown me
talking
a
about
lot
it, showing some stuff, and he's
Yeah.
like, "Oh, I've always wanted to do that."
Yep.
And
Playing with the sharks.
I told him, living in the Midwest, it's kind of tough. It's not like you can just go and jump in the ocean and dive. So it's kind of you have to set it up kind of situation. So,
But yeah, I'm real excited for that. I also want to get my motorcycle license, but we'll wait till after the scuba license, right?
Well, you could just ride the bike into the
Yeah,
ocean.
there you go. We'll do that.
Make sure you got your scuba gear on.
Yeah. Yeah, we can set that up.
Right, let's jump onto Fusz Ford then. So when you came here, you just came in as a porter, correct?
Correct, yes.
And then you worked your way up, and now you're inventory manager. We did pass on the head porter, but that's something you had to take back on because we're a little low on staff, right?
For sure. And I actually got really lucky with how I kind of moved up because I had only worked here, about 5 months maybe?
I think Catherine.
And the previous inventory manager was put in her 2 weeks or 1 month or whatever it was, and position opened up, and I remember Jason sitting me down because she had taken some time off, and he was just like, "Hey, kind of thinking of you for this position. If it ends up happening, would you be interested?" And I was like, "Heck yeah."
So let's talk about that a little bit. So, and any of this you don't want to talk about, that's fine. But so, everyone that's taken that role has found it very stressful in that role. What is it about that role that specifically is super stressful? Because a lot of people assume that being a porter is an easy job. It's an entry-level job for sure, but it's also a very difficult job and a very important role in the store. So what makes that position particularly stressful for you?
If I had to pinpoint it, because I guess what I'll do is I'll kind of separate both roles. So my inventory manager side of things and my porter side of things, like with the inventory manager, that's not overly stressful really at all. I mean, I'm in charge of the inventory, I stock in cars, I make sure they go through PDI, I check for recalls, that kind of thing. That's not overly stressful. You look at the porter side of things, I get to drive nice cars, I get to clean up cars, I get to, help around the shops, all that kind of stuff, drive cars for monitors or whatever it is. Both jobs are very entertaining and fun. I guess the stressors in both of them are just the fact that when you kind of combine the two, I almost feel like there's not enough hours in the day to kind of get it all done. And I guess I kind of am a perfectionist, but I don't know if I necessarily...
Did you just say kind of a perfectionist?
No, I don't...
Let me make a point to everyone. There's no kinder about it. He's a perfectionist, and that's the end of it.
I think a lot of, but I guess I would agree to that. But I think most of it is I just like getting the job done because I feel like it's rewarding, and so I guess that adds a lot of stress to my job when something doesn't get done. Because there are days where the workload isn't super, stressful, or there's not a lot or anything like that. Like there are definitely some days, especially now, where I kind of have to find my own work to do. But as far as where all the stress comes from, I guess it's just kind of meshing both jobs. Because if I take each job individually, I did enjoy being a porter a lot. Like in the 5-6 months that I was a porter, I loved it. I mean, even cleaning up cars, like it was a lot of fun.
Let's touch on that perfectionist thing, because I'm always a big believer in genetics, and the way people are brought up is, how they are kind of bred into being what they are as a human being. what is it? Could you pinpoint what you believe kind of made you somewhat of a perfectionist?
Oh, I know exactly.
Oh, really good. I'm glad.
My mother. I don't know if I would. Yeah, I guess I would call her a perfectionist too. I'm a big mama's boy, and I grew up. I was in the Boy Scouts and ended up with Eagle Scout rank and all that stuff. And she is definitely, I don't know if she'd admit it, but she's definitely a workaholic, and she just loves getting the job done, loves handling everything, like all that kind of stuff, and puts a lot of stress on herself. So I definitely think that I get it from my mom, because she is, I love my father too, but my mom is definitely probably my biggest role model. I love them both to death, but I definitely am proud of my mom and her work ethic and everything, so I definitely get a lot of that from her.
So that's where it came from.
Yeah, it definitely came from my mom, because just growing up, she was never a stay-at-home mom. She always worked. She worked a lot of hours, but she worked hours to where she could literally, she'd bring us to school in the morning at 7, 8 in the morning. She'd get off work at 3, bring us home, make sure we were fed real quick, and she'd go right back into work. So she definitely, I 100% get it all from her. And which, that's not to say my dad isn't a hard worker either. He definitely was, but he also enjoyed his own time too. So he might not always put in a lot of the same hours, but my mom just loved to work.
Well, I'm glad I pulled that out of you.
Yeah, I know. So you kind of got your answer on that.
I've been poking
one.
at that for a very long
Yep.
time. So.
And I had also kind of been thinking about that too, because I kind of knew I got it from my mom, but I wasn't exactly sure where. And then I kind of reflected on growing up and all that, and it was right in front of my face,
Yeah, I like I said, I've always been a big believer of like genetics and learned traits, I guess.
100%.
And I'm kind of the same. My work ethic I got from my dad. He was the same. He was a workaholic and would never turn down work and just keep going. In fact, my dad had an opportunity to become the, I guess, GM or whatever you would like. I guess, I wouldn't say owner per se, but I guess the CEO or whatever of the company when they sold out, and he refused it because he just said, I'm a worker, that's all I need to worry about.
Okay.
So yeah, he had that opportunity. But I think that's all I've got for you today. Have you got anything that you want to bring up?
Not that I can think of, because we always kind of have our talks.
Yeah.
So I get all of
One thing I would like Blake to do is we need porters pretty badly.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay, sell the role a little bit for us.
Well, like I said, it might feel rough some days, and sometimes you might not necessarily think it's worth it. But what really does kind of keep me here is there is a lot of potential in this business still. And I just love the fact, they might not be high-class cars per se, like I guess Mercedes or, Ferrari or anything like that, but I've always kind of liked the Ford brand, and to me they are kind of high-class cars, so it was always fun when I got to drive a nice, now 2021 F-150, or now the Broncos or the Mustangs or the GT500, like any car, even some of the used cars that we get in, like it was just a lot of fun. Like I had a blast, so it's like you might not feel like the job's worth it all the time, but it really was a blast. And the team here, some days it feels rough, but deep down I like everybody here as far as I can tell. It feels like a really good spot to work. I always enjoy coming into work. Some days it is rough, but at the end of the day when I'm going home, I always feel like I did a good job.
Good. Well, thanks for joining me this week. As always, over at Fusz Ford, we can replace the car, not the customer. Apply for a porter's position, and I'll see you all next week.